All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Thursday, the 9th. So, a very similar move at the end of the day in the S&P. Very tight range, by the way. There's always going to be a little bit over dramatization when you're trading in such a tight range. I mean, the S&P basically, we're down 6 basis points. So, I see a lot of reactions of, I think I'm not faulting CNBC, but you start to see a couple red bars, and you haven't seen them in about a week, so you forget like the muscle memory when we see some selling, a little bit of selling pressure, when we haven't had any volatility, when the VIX is at a 10. It just seems like it's a little bit of a bigger move than it actually is, but it's the same exact thing happened yesterday, and very typical of August, where there's very light volume. So when somebody has a little bit of selling to do, they're gonna push things a little bit, and there wasn't that much of an MOC sell imbalance. But again, it's not, even just a small sell imbalance will push this market a little bit because it is August, and it's very low volume. So I wouldn't read too much into this other than, we're getting a little bit toppy. It's kind of a little bit expected, I would think, for us to kind of run into a little bit of, I don't want to say resistance, but, we're kind of hesitating a little bit up here. And, look at where we've come from. So you can't be greedy, right? After, a real nice move up here, obviously in July, a little bit of a move at the end of the month, and a little bit of and a nice move at the beginning of the month. So again, don't be greedy with this market. It will humble you very quickly. And again, I'm not saying that you need to reduce all your exposure. I'm just basically saying just to be cognizant of your risk right now. Here's what I also pointed out a couple weeks ago at the end of July. This was a tweet that I sent out noting the performance in the beginning of the month versus the end of the month in the last 4 months. There might be a little bit of a theory here. Maybe there's some what's called quantitative tightening, QT, where the Fed is reducing the balance sheet. So that, I don't know if they're scheduled to do that again for August, but they did that in a couple months. But notice how profitable, right? I could tell you from personal experience, in the beginning of June, actually the beginning of May, June, and July, my P&L was flying. And then in May and June, I gave a lot back at the end of the month. So the reason why I state this, I talked a lot about this in the trading room today, in the Tribeca trade room today, midday. Be aware of this. Now, I don't know if the pattern is going to continue, but we've already had a nice beginning of the month of August. So I think we're up, what, about 2% or somewhere around there, month to date. So it's kind of looking like some of these other starts to the month. So I'm not saying I don't have a crystal ball that we're going to go down for the second half of the month. But if you've made some nice money, don't get greedy. Don't try to push it to the end of the month. And learn a little bit from what we've seen the last 4 months. So how am I trading this market? Well, so here's a nice thing. You do have everybody always talks about the advantages, the institutional trading versus retail trading. You as a retail trader have advantages over an institution because you could trade your trading, you could change your trading style to anything you want. If you are, my bread and butter, for example, is swing trading. I do probably about, and it ranges, and I'll get to that, but I do about 60 to 70% swing trading and maybe about 30% day trading. However, when I think we're getting toppy, I can change it. I could do 50-50, or I don't have to put on any new swing trades at all. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for tomorrow, which is Friday. Unless something hits me over the head and is super good looking trade. But you could day trade all you want and take the risk off, and basically scalp a little bit if you're not comfortable. You could do things like fool yourself a little bit and take a tiny trade instead of taking your normal size trade. So there's a whole bunch of things that you could do to kind of manage the situation. I will go over today's option activity. I'll talk about my trades that I put on. So really, on our private Twitter feed, so really been giving some bang up trades this week and the last couple weeks actually. But I put on my thinking and I put a whole analysis together on Grubhub, which I think was a good setup going into after Yelp reported. This was a chart that we looked at a couple times. Had a nice earnings gap up, but has kind of been flagging here a little bit. And you've got some support. So it did not close on the highs, but that's why you take targets. So I did hit one target in this trade. I also put on a small restoration hardware trade because the options are really difficult in restoration hardware. But I'm targeting this 153. So I did put on a trade as well for that. And then like I've been saying this week, make sure you take your targets in some things. Salesforce, now better than a double from a trade I put on last week. So I put on a call spread for $1, right around $1.50. Took some of that off for $2. Dow DuPont, big insider buy yesterday was announced, so was able to hit a target in this one. MasterCard, some of these names, I've been joking around because let's see if I can find this here. Well, what did I do with this? But I've been joking around with this. I think I talked about this yesterday, but I found the picture. I found the picture that I was looking for of the Big Lebowski, just kind of waiting. That's basically what you've had to do for some trades. I put on a trade in MasterCard in the beginning of the week, and every day I'm like, it's moving up. It's moving up in the right direction, but it's barely moving. So, a couple other trades, right? We've seen EA every day. They're adding to call spread. EA has done nothing, but they are adding just monster trades. So I've mentioned this thing like 5 times now. January 135, 155 call spread. They're selling some puts too. So you just have to do this. You just got to hang out and wait for it to do something. Also in the gaming space, which is not seeing much call buying, but I think might actually be even a better technical setup is this ATVI, which is right at the 200-day moving average. Look at how well this thing has managed to hold the 200-day moving average. It's done this a few times. Here's a big test. Here you had a nice W. Wilson. And we'll see what it does. We had a green day today, up 70 basis points in ATVI. So it's something I'm watching. I don't want to get, since I do have that position on in EA. I'm long EA. So sometimes I don't want to put two of the same, very similar companies on. But maybe I put this one on in small size. Halliburton, I don't know what they're doing in Halliburton at this point. They've been buying calls for the last week. I'm in this trade too, and it's getting a little frustrating. But they are buying. Sometimes when I think they buy too much of something, sometimes I think that they're substituting out of stock or doing some sorts. Even though this has not been marked like that, but January 47 calls. So again, I'm in this one too, and I'll bring up my friend here, just waiting. And waiting for this, by the way, does not look like a good chart. So I'm only in this because of the option activity, which I feel is dangerous. I always like to have a multiple amount of reasons for going into a name, not just because we're seeing calls go up. But I'm curious enough to stay in this trade to see what the hell they're doing by purchasing all these calls in this one. What else did I? So that's been a trade I put on last week, and I was able to hit one target in that trade, which makes me feel a little bit better. SBBP, this was a great trade that we had on. This was a member trade that somebody brought to my attention, and again, using my technicals here, we went into this at 5 or 498 yesterday. I was able to take some off at 6 yesterday, and then at 650. So notice this VPOC up here. We gave a whole lesson about what VPOCs are during the midday session of the room, but man, do they work very well. So that was here, and that's exactly where I took off this trade at 650, and it's down 50 cents from there. So that looks like that was an excellent exit, at least for the day. Great. Another couple great examples of VPOCs is the one in Melly that we saw. which, by the way, was a home run of a earnings trade. I put on a trade. So really interesting. Some of these names that are reporting. Melly is one, right? That the earnings were not that great. They said that that maybe that they were somewhat optimistic about the second half of the year. Somewhat optimistic brings up the stock $40 because I didn't see anything. I didn't listen to the whole earnings call, but I did read the notes from it, and they said that they had some issues with Mexico and Brazil. They certainly didn't say anything that I thought was that positive. If you see something, you can tweet me or email me and let me know what it is. But I don't. Regardless, I was able to cash out of a trade very nicely for. I put on a trade, a call spread for $3 and took it off for $7 today. So really nice. And I also played this one, UPLD. And I was able to get out of this at the highs. Again, so not being too greedy. If you get something for a double or a triple, take it, I think, anyway. Because some of these names, they do revert back on earnings. So what else? Docu, I'm out of this trade for a double. I talked about that one a couple times. A couple of names reporting after the... Oh, sorry, I did not go over the earnings. Sorry. I always say these backwards. I did not go over the option trades. I'll go over them. But man, these smaller names that are reporting this week are really, I would have to say, pretty fun stuff. This TDD is up big. Look at this thing. It's up to 107. I did not take this trade. I was looking at ICUI. I cannot. The options were stupid wide. So I did not trade this one. The only one I traded was ePay today. And I don't think this thing's moving, which is fine. Sometimes these names don't trade after hours, but it did beat, and I think it beat the highest estimate. So we'll see if this thing, bottom line technologies. Overstock, they announced, I think somebody took an investment in them. So they're up to $47, up $12. So today's option activity, I'll run through this very quickly. I mentioned the Halliburton, Symantec, Pizza had some calls go up today. Couple members in the room made some nice money off of that. HIIQ, a lot of GM was being purchased on activist chatter. That was another trade that I think some members made some money off of today because this thing took off very nicely. There was a tiny bit of red hat calls on more chatter type stuff. Halliburton, there was a nice not Halliburton, Hilton, there was a nice call spread. There was more Yandex. So repeat buying there, and a little bit of Gilead going up as well today. So that's it for the most part for trades. But yeah, I mean, you really want to think about strategy, I think, at this point, and watch how you're trading. So important. Strategy and thinking about how you're managing your trades and your exposure. Much more important than any particular trade that you see on the tape. It's much more important. So just keep that in mind. And again, keep in mind how the end of the month has been performing relative to the first half of the month. Thanks for watching today's video. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.